Are you a basketball player that wants the kind of steady confidence that great athletes seem to have? Well, today I'm going to share one of their secrets. It's a way of thinking that gives them an advantage over average players that allow the ups and downs of their own confidence to get in the way of performing at their peak level. Let's jump in and discuss. Welcome back to Hard Smart Together. I'm Coach Dave. I'm here every week to help basketball players become the smart, confident players that coaches love. So we're talking again about that steady, unshakable confidence that's a goal of every player out there. You want to have that steady confidence so you can perform at a peak level. And if you notice, there's great athletes across the spectrum of sports that tend always perform at a high level. They tend to perform at their peak more often than not. They tend to have that unshakable confidence to, take the final shot, to win the game, to make the big play, to whatever the case might be. So today I want to talk about really an advantage they have over an average player and the way an average player thinks, and give you a little insight into their thought process and how they think. And I want to start with a story about one of the great athletes across sports, Jack Nicklaus. Now, Jack Nicklaus, if you don't follow golf, is arguably the greatest golfer to ever play the game of golf. He won more tournaments, more majors. He is what Tiger Woods was chasing in order to catch up to all Jack Nicklaus's records. He was the motivator for Tiger Woods as Tiger was growing up. So Jack Nicklaus was at a fundraising dinner. He was the keynote speaker at a fundraising dinner. And he was talking about the history of his career and really, some stories about his career, but also, some things that he did that made him, as successful as he was. And so he's given this talk, and he mentions two things that stood out. He said, I've never three-putted the final hole of any tournament, and I've never missed a putt within 5 feet the final hole of any tournament. Well, there was a guy in the audience that struck him as kind of odd, and as Jack Nicklaus is kind of getting into a little Q&A, he raises his hand and he says, I'm sorry, Mr. Nicklaus. I know you're great and everything, but you mentioned that you've never three-putted or missed within 5 feet the final hole of a tournament. I just saw you like last month at the Senior PGA tournament, and you missed a putt to win the tournament. Jack Nicklaus repeated, I'm sorry, sir, you're mistaken. I've never three-putted or missed within 5 feet the final hole of a tournament. He said, Mr. Nicklaus, no offense, but I have it on tape. I can show you the tape. I've got it. No need to show me any tape, sir. As I've stated, I have never three-putted or missed a putt within 5 feet on the final hole of a tournament. So Jack Nicklaus gets done with his speech and gets done with giving autographs and talking, and he leaves the room. Well, there was a sports psychiatrist in the room that this gentleman walked up to, a pretty famous sports psychologist, walked up to the sports psychologist and said, I'm just so bothered by this. I get it that Jack Nicklaus is one of the greatest players or the greatest player to ever live, but it's a fact. I've got it on tape. Why was he so adamant that he's never three-putted or missed within 5 feet on the final hole of a tournament? And so the sports psychologist said, well, let me ask you, do you golf? He said, yeah, I golf. He says, well, what's your handicap? I'm like a 16 handicap. He says, so you're kind of a mediocre golfer. He goes, yeah, I go out on the weekends with my buddies and I'm not great. He said, and you're confused about why Jack Nicklaus doesn't think the way you think. Why he can say he's never three-putted or never missed within 5 feet, whereas for you, that's a bizarre concept because it's unrealistic. Hey, I'll get back to the episode in just a second. I hope you're enjoying today's episode, and if you are, please share it. Share it with a player, share it with a parent, share it with a coach, anybody that you feel might need to hear it. I also wanted to give you a free gift that I've made available to you just for hanging out with me today. It's a checklist of skills for basketball players that want to become a better player, a better teammate, and to stand out to their coaches. Now, these skills are skills that are often overlooked, but they can be the foundation that a player can use to really achieve their goals. You can download it at hardsmarttogether.com/intangibles. I'll put a link below in the description as well, but it's hardsmarttogether.com/intangibles. Now let's jump back to today's episode. Well, guess what? Great athletes think differently from average athletes. That gives them an advantage. They have something which we can refer to as selective amnesia. What is selective amnesia? They tend to forget their mistakes. They tend to forget their misses. They tend to focus on the putts that went in, the free throws that won the game, the three-pointers they make, the defensive stops they get. They tend to focus on their successes, and they tend to forget their failures. Now, probably a little bit more relevant for basketball, Michael Jordan once in an interview said, listen, I think of my mistakes after a game for 10 minutes. I allow myself 10 minutes to think of my mistakes. And he uses that as a learning opportunity. What could he work on to make those mistakes not happen the next game? But then he forgets them. He wipes the slate clean. He has selective amnesia about his mistakes. He does not dwell on it like most of us do. I mean, throughout my entire career, just think of your playing career to this point. How many times have you just, agonized over the mistakes you made when you got home from a game for days, for weeks, at the next practice? How many times do you focus on, oh, if I had just made that shot, if I had just made those free throws, if I had just made that play? Whether it's games or practices or whatever. Great athletes think differently from average athletes, and that gives them an advantage over average athletes. That allows them to play at their peak level. There's a saying that you can think about. People tend to become what they think about themselves. People tend to become what they think about themselves. If you're constantly thinking and dwelling on your misses, if you're dwelling on your mistakes, if you're dwelling on what went wrong, if you're dwelling on the losses, if you're thinking about those things, well, you become an average athlete that thinks like an average athlete. Whereas it doesn't matter the sport, it doesn't matter the, what it is. It could be, Mia Hamm in soccer. It could be Michael Jordan. It could be Jack Nicklaus. It could be, across the spectrum of sports. It could be Diana Taurasi. They don't think the same way you do. So what can you do? You can change the way you think. It's going to take time. It takes time to retrain your brain, but you've got to catch yourself when you're concentrating and focusing on your mistakes and thinking and rewinding that play in your head over and over and over again, what you could have done differently. You got to give yourself an opportunity to wipe the slate clean, to have selective amnesia, and to move on and focus on the great plays you make. Focus on the shots that went in. Focus on the free throws that won the game. Focus on the defensive stops that you got. People tend to become what they think about themselves. You might become that valuable contributor to your team. You might become that college player. You might become that person that got the scholarship. You might become that person that made it to the next level. You might become that starter. You might become that smart, confident player that your coach loves. So that's, the story for today. We talk about this unshakable confidence that I want you to develop for yourself. And we talk about it coming from 3 areas. Who you are as a person and the relationships that you're forming as a person, being a good fundamental person. How you play the game and how you think about the game. Okay? This is a step towards changing the way you think and thinking more like one of those great athletes across all sports. So as always, I love the likes. If you know somebody that could use this message, please forward it on to them. If you got a comment for me, I'd love to hear from you guys out there. So until next week, remember to play hard, play smart, and play together. See you next week.